First of all, I wanted to kick this off by giving you just a quick background on the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance. I'm the managing partner there. We represent about 100 companies around the world that are focused on delivering the best customer experience and user experiences out there, primarily through CPaaS, but CCaaS is also a common platform that's used. Our theme today is really to try and figure out how to make money out of this new space. We think that you can double your revenue as agents and as vendors within the next 18 to 24 months with some of the tricks and the trades we're going to share with you. You're at the right place at the right time. Our industry is going to grow from $16 billion in this last year to $100 billion. And so for those that figure it out, it's going to be a fun ride. I'm excited with who I have here on the panel. We've got some great experience across both technology as well as in the channel. And so let me just introduce them quickly, and then we'll get right into some questions so that we can get to the content. So first, we have Robert Galop here, who is the CMO of the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance, but also the former CMO, CPO at Telarus. So he's kind of been there, done that. We're going to learn some of his secrets here in a minute. Many of you probably already know Shane Speakman, recently from Telarus, but now has launched his own agency because he sees the opportunity that's on the other side of the fence. And so I think we'll have some good insights from there. And then Adam Hiatt, who has recently joined Telarus and bringing a bunch of real technology experience in the channel and a lot of hands-on use cases that he's actually implemented himself during his days at Dialpad. So I think we've got a really well-rounded group and look forward to a robust conversation here. So I think where I want to start this, though, is that the term CPaaS, Communications Platform as a Service, has been around for a while. There are some very successful companies that are selling billions of dollars of those types of applications and services. So, Shane, why haven't we seen that in the channel? Why hasn't it happened for us?
I would say it's primarily because the suppliers don't know how to verbalize what that compensation model really looks like. I kind of go back to the old days of long distance, and I'm sure many of you had your roots in long distance like I did. I had a young rep once who sold a cheap PRI, as he put it, because it wasn't the $500 ones. It was one of these LD PRIs that was only $250, and he was bummed that he only sold a $250 PRI because it was half as much revenue. And I said, bro, what you're missing here is the usage. Like what you just sold is a long distance PRI that's going to have all kinds of revenue attached to it. You just don't see it right now. And I think CPaaS, in that same vein, has been difficult for partners to look at to say, oh, this is exactly the price, and it's easy to verbalize what that value proposition is.
So Adam, you've actually been with customers trying to implement some of this next generation stuff. How has that played a role in why things maybe haven't gone as quickly as some other parts of the industry?
Yeah, so I think it can be a blessing and a curse, like the simplicity of CPaaS. You can approach it from a very simplistic perspective in that you often focus on a singular business outcome. But the curse of that is it might have a small revenue associated with that up front. Of course, we're going to see a lot of residuals coming down the road based on usage charges. But you really have to flip your thinking on that. It's not about that singular business outcome that you solved. It's about that being a wedge into additional opportunities that will come from that, because the customer, the user, will actually see how easy it is to snipe technology, matching technology up with particular business needs, solving that quickly, easy, low friction, and being able to move on to bigger and better things without having to go through a whole unified communication or contact center overhaul. That can take years involving lots of different teams, whereas CPaaS lets you get in and out real quickly, and then that will just grow.
And it was super nerdy. It was so engineering-led, right, that it took an engineer to facilitate even the most simple task. And so now, with these modern platforms with CPaaS, it's so much easier to do a campaign or for the average user to really interact with. That's part of the secret, I think, that's brought it to a retail perspective.
CPaaS 5 years ago was new, so we were developing it as we were going. Now, that catalog exists. Right? So you just pick it off the shelf, you implement it, and you're off and doing something else.
Easy enough that at Telarus, I can tell you that a major initiative for us, if I were to put back on my Telarus hat, was to have a CPaaS initiative in communication with all of our partners. In fact, we did a trial at one of our events, and it was such a huge success. It made for a much more efficient means of communication that we saw better adoption in each of the breakout sessions. And so, look, candidly, if we could have used that technology for this session, I'm sure all the seats would be filled.
It's true. It's true. I think that's one of the beauties of it is how we are able to really interact with the end user, right? Just to double down a little bit, I think, on some of the other issues, is that CPaaS did start as a nerdy technology. It was brought to market exclusively through developers. And so we talk about that in terms of this, we call ourselves CPaaS, it's a little shorter than CPaaS Acceleration Alliance. But we talk about CPaaS in terms of 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. And so 1.0 is simple messaging, a lot of development. 2.0, it's now drag and drop tools. And 3.0, we're going to get to this in a minute, is AI and all these advanced use cases where there's really some big money to be made there. Robert, you were one of the pioneers at IntelliPure in bringing CPaaS to market. I'd say even at this point, one of the few that were successful selling that through the channel as well. Maybe share with us a little bit how you were able to actually triple revenue by bringing these types of services to market.
Yeah, and I'll go back. And as we got the technology going, 5 years ago, it was a couple of APIs, right? And you go out and what does it do? Oh, it does everything, right? And how do you sell everything? It's almost impossible, especially through the channel. So over the last several years, what you've seen, as Adam mentioned, is we've built a library up in this market that you can actually go out and copy paste across customers. So one of the big things for us at IntelliPure was not thinking about this as, hey, I'm going to go win a new deal with this, right? What CPaaS is really good at is you go in and you lead with your UC solution, you lead with your CCaaS or your security solution. CPaaS allows you to go in after that and add a lot more bespoke things. It allows you to go in and solve problems for the customer that once you're in there, once you have the relationship, you've got the right, you've got the ability to go in and do those things. So what I always love to do with our sales team was go out and show an org map. And when you're selling CCaaS, you're selling UCaaS, you're talking to the IT guy in the back office, maybe you're talking to the ops or the contact center owner, but you're not talking to the rest of the organization, right? But what happens once you're in there and the marketing team sees, oh, I've got these communication channels, how can I go out and run a campaign against these people that I'm already talking to in the contact center, right? So what CPaaS allows you to do is it allows you to go out and touch every other area of the organization and have a conversation with them. Let me go out and run a campaign, Shane, as you had mentioned, right? Let me go out and do an SMS campaign to drive attendance to this event. Super simple once you've got that. And that was a big part of our success story at IntelliPure was let's go out, let's get these initial pieces out, and then just go back to the well time after time and add a new use case, and it takes a while to get there, but eventually you're talking real money as you add those things in every time.
I love that example of talking to marketing because I think that's probably the ideal candidate who to approach first. You can ask them a simple question, what's your cost per lead? And they're going to know that number. And if you can go to them and say, hey, I can provide you another channel, another source for lead generation, and it's at a lower price point, they're going to love that and they're going to want to buy it on the spot. It's a very quick sale there, and as I mentioned, that's then the wedge to be able to go talk to sales next and do something similar there.
But I think one of the keys there, too, is that it allows us to sell value rather than a widget, which is critical, right? Because if you're selling to the IT group, that means you're selling against all of your competition because they're in there, it's an RFP type situation or something like that. Whereas when you're able to enter other parts of the organization, they have a real need. And so you're not selling a vitamin, you're selling hardcore pharma to them to solve a real pain point. And so that's where you can start driving your margins even a little bit higher, or at least you're not eroding them because competition's coming in on the side. So I think that's a real takeaway is as you look at the organizations where you already have a relationship, I'm certain many of you have a ton of UCaaS seats that are already deployed. These are things that you then layer on top of that, and you're able to sell in other areas of the organization, get other parts of the budget, are a real key takeaway. So that's a good point. Shane, you left Telarus. There must have been some really green field on the other side.
Still a shareholder, great company.
Yes, yes. But what is that opportunity? I think, as we've talked, it's really these future solutions where you see such an opportunity. So maybe share with us a little bit about what you're seeing and how the channel could really take advantage of what's coming.
So what's interesting is I would fly around the world. I took 143 flights last year, and I would do a whole session on CPaaS, right? And so, at fear of being overly loquacious here, I'll tell you that to me, the rise of CX through that hosted phone solution, I don't know how many of you remember competing against Magic Jack back in the day. But as we've looked at that progression of technology, there's been a huge tidal wave of really good suppliers who have entered in with everything from Microsoft Teams integration to a Dialpad where Adam was, which is really AI driven. I look now at what that next form of communication is and the opportunity that exists in an area where the channel hasn't fully embraced it, and to me that was CPaaS. And look, everything from I gotta get on stage. I know, right? I gotta get on stage and talk forever on this. The reality of it is, the opportunity for messaging is bigger than any of us really know. When Kevin talks about it becoming a $100 billion industry, we're talking about everyday, very perfunctory applications that are now automated through this service that everybody is using. You think about even, I have a pharmacy at Costco, right? And to me, and I saw that transaction happen through the channel with a partner who had no idea that that was even part of an offering. And now it is his biggest customer and his biggest revenue source. And I thought, why the hell am I teaching all these partners how to do this when I see the opportunity out there to go out and build on it? So what did I do? I bought $300,000 of revenue so I can go back in and sell CPaaS to it. And so from my eyes, it's what's the most efficient form of communication? Well, look, being a closet redneck, I get messages from Cabela's all the time. And guess what? I buy from them because of that. I want to go sell that service. And like Adam said, it's not just the old boring CIO, IT director conversation. Now you're talking about an ROI, a revenue generation, whereas before it was seen as utility.
Yeah, so we just got back, just quickly, from Barcelona at Mobile World Congress just a couple of weeks ago. And, we all get messages, as, Shane was just describing, but they were sharing numbers. We're only at 6% penetration on companies using messaging as a channel. Think about that. It's huge on where this is going.
Yeah. So to touch on the marketing opportunity, huge ROI numbers. So one of our members of the Alliance is Infobip, and the story that they always go back with is an opportunity for marketing messages to drive sales, right? And one of the campaigns that they put out, when you think about email, how many people get and read marketing emails on a daily basis? Right? I'm unsubscribe. But they had an SMS and an RCS campaign that went out. 67% increased open rate, 120% lift in terms of conversions and sales off of that campaign. So when you're talking about opportunity to go out and create value for your customers, opportunity to charge more as you're creating that value. If I'm going to generate tens of millions of dollars, do you think it's worth another $500 grand or $1 million for me to run these types of programs for these guys? Heck yeah, every marketer out there, when you've got that type of ROI on the table, is going to sign up for that because they can go back to the rest of their business, they can go back to the CEOs and say, this is the impact that we're going to have.
Absolutely. So Adam, you've had a unique experience where you've been engaging directly with customers. You were in a role where we went from pre-AI to now AI is all we talk about. We can't have a session without it, therefore I'm bringing it up. Tell me a little bit about your experience, because CPaaS actually ends up being the single best platform to deliver AI solutions. So walk us through maybe a couple of use cases, some experiences, because I think this is an area where we can print money if we do this right.
Yeah, every supplier at this conference and around the world in every industry, all they're talking about is AI. This is not new to anybody, but one of the opportunities over the past few years has been to build it and then sell it. And what's happened is that the opportunity and the technology is evolving faster than the suppliers can keep up with that. So we have a lot of suppliers here who offer all of these great AI features, and they're doing it themselves, but AI is now literally years ahead of their latest iteration that just came out last week. So if I'm a customer and I'm a buyer and I want to implement AI, I don't want to limit myself to a supplier who tries to own it all and do it all themselves. I want to align myself with an ecosystem of the latest and greatest innovations in the AI space. And that is CPaaS.
That's great advice.
Yeah, because you can just bolt it on to whatever the customer already has and you're not limiting yourself. And it's very straightforward. So all the suppliers here, again, as I mentioned, are great at what they do. Primarily, right, UC voice, contact center, now we're talking on the channel. But as we mentioned, We are all trained as consumers to operate digitally, mobile. And that's why that opportunity is in the messaging space. So if you go talk to any of your customers who might already have a UC solution or a contact center, say, how do you interact with your customers digitally, mobile first, and have AI writing on top of that, they don't have a solution for it because those suppliers aren't there yet. So you have to reach out to the CPaaS providers to look into it. So I think of a great use case of Simon Medical actually was an IntelliPeer customer who was in that exact situation. They had a unified communication platform, they had a contact center platform, and in the healthcare space, what they identified was that they were missing out on a ton of revenue associated with prescription refills, right? Because they weren't notifying their customers when their prescriptions were due or were available to be refilled via the channel that the customer would get it. I think you just mentioned like the open rate, talking about the actual consumption of SMS. The average SMS message is viewed within 5 minutes, 80% of the time. Right? It's because that's how we're trained. So if I'm a company and I want to reach out to my audience, and I know that this particular channel type will be viewed within 5 minutes, I want to invest in that. Whereas email, it probably won't get opened at all.
Yeah.
And voice, we're all trained not to answer. So Simon Medical said, hey, we're going to look at CPaaS as a way to put mobile messaging on top of our existing contact center solution, and they were able to obviously see a significant return on that investment.
Awesome. So the other angle I want to take a little bit, and you did this in IntelliPeer, and we're seeing it among our members, is how do we fit CPaaS into our current business? So if I already have a CCaaS offering or a UCaaS offering, Robert, what are some specific, let's get real tangible here, what are some specific use cases that those in the room here could actually go tomorrow and work with on the CPaaS side?
Yeah. So 2 examples, and I want to touch on the AI piece real quick. AI can still be tricky from a CX perspective, right? You put a bot out there. My favorite one is Air Canada, where the bot was making up policies on the fly, right? And Air Canada was on the hook. But one of the cool things you can do with AI is once you bring the CPaaS platform in, you can start listening to those conversations that you're already in the mix with, right? And you can start summarizing those pieces. And what that gives you a view of is why customers are calling, what are the challenges that they're having. And that literally gives you a list of things that you can go back to the customer with and say, hey, let's hit this first thing, and I'm going to address 30% of the reasons customers are calling in, right?
Let me just reiterate that point. They will do this for free.
Yes.
Yeah, the suppliers here that are at this conference will analyze your customers' voice interactions at no cost, and then turn around and tell them what the opportunity is to implement CPaaS solutions for optimization.
But here's what I found. And look, obviously, I've lived CX. I think Telarus, we did almost $1 billion of contract value last year. A lot of CX. And the reality of it is, there are still deficiencies in the major platforms out there who say, look, don't bolt on a third-party CPaaS application. We have it embedded in ours. As an agent now, I'm going through a couple opportunities that are CPaaS-led, and they want to do one-to-many messaging. And even my favorite CX suppliers are having a really hard time facilitating this. Oh, by the way, there's some other applications that we're not even talking about that, again, kind of they solve for some of those perfunctory tasks that ultimately CPaaS really easily can help with that efficiency. So,
And more cost effectively, right? It's not another big license.
right.
And so from a customer perspective, it's something that's favorable as well.
And I think these types of meetings can be very ephemeral, where you walk out and you think, oh, that was cool. What they talk about? If nothing else, and look, again, this is one of the reasons that I put all of my chips on the table, is I see a wave coming. And I wish I would have been in front of that when I had little SMB customers asking me for cloud. And I look at now this ask for AI. And the reality is we're using CPaaS more than any of us realize. Our customers are using it more than anybody realizes. Yet for some reason, we've all been stuck in this mindset of we've got to sell them a seat. And it's not always the best solution.
So to go back on what you can do today, like Adam had just said, go talk to the providers that are out there. They're offering these AI services for free, and it's literally a roadmap for you to go back into the customer and find opportunities and deliver value. The other piece is you look at the entire customer journey. Everything from, hey, I need to get some reviews for the service that I just did. How do I do that? Oh, I'm going to send a text message. I'm going to do a quick survey. I'm going to bring that review back, put it on Google, which is then going to start the virtuous cycle of more Google reviews, more people coming back to my business, right? And all of these things, you start to touch every single part of the customer experience. And there's platforms out there that we're working with at the Alliance that do all of those things. And the beautiful thing is, it's all out of the box. Right? Pricing is already set, which we haven't had for 5-6 years. Pricing is set, it's very clear if you're at a particular location what it's going to cost. And it's very clear what the uptick is going to be in terms of impact to new customers coming in, impact to your CSAT scores, and other things in the business. So those are two very critical things.
Right, I mean, and they're out of the box. You could literally sign up and do that tomorrow. Absolutely. Another direction I want to take the conversation just briefly is that I think it does take a little bit of a different mindset, right? I think typically as sales guys, we've gone in, with our nail, with the hammer, we're looking for a nail to hit, right? And so one of the things that I think is really important as we consider new services is we have to take a step back and listen, right? So I think that's the other part of this is we talk a lot about the technology, the features, and even some of these really cool use cases, but it's the soft side of our business where sometimes we have to make the biggest changes in the mindset, how our salespeople are trained, and so forth. So I'd like to get your insights on maybe where you've seen success in your organizations because an individual on your sales team has gotten it, and what's made them successful versus the guy that just keeps trying to sell the same thing again. Shane, you maybe want to take that first?
Yeah, I will tell you that, so in the early days of the Telarus UCaaS academies, I would have CPaaS providers act as ancillary speakers to the conferences. And what I found was that partners who went out and said, we sell messaging, typically were not as successful as those who said, let's look at your entire voice environment and how you connect with your customers. And so it's easy to say CPaaS is messaging, because primarily it is. And if you're a WhatsApp user, you can start getting into rich communication services and it gets really cool at what can happen. But I think it's easy to go in, again, as a hammer, hitting that nail of we do messaging, and someone say, well, that's offered in the Microsoft E5 license now. And you lose quickly with that. But stepping back, those who say, let's look at how you want that interaction to occur. How can you benefit from the additional open rate with messaging, or even, again, some of those other tasks like two-factor authentication or verification. Those are, that's being more of a consultant, and I think that architecture helps solidify you as the more valued partner in that conversation rather than here's messaging.
Right. Adam, as you were out in the field, what did you see make some people successful versus others?
I think it's understanding that CPaaS isn't one thing, it's almost everything. The opportunities are endless. And so being able to get in front of a customer and paint that picture of the art of what's possible, and that's kind of a cliche thing, but it's really asking your customer and listening, what do you wish you could do? How do you wish you could interact with your customers? Right? CPaaS is hyper-personalized customer experiences. So if you could paint any picture of how you interact with your customers, what would that look like? And then be able to say to them, I got you. I got this.
Dude, I like that, but at the same time, I think you lean on guys who have done this and built this to say, here's some best practices. This may work for you. There's this little company called Costco who texts me when my prescription is ready. You may want to think about when someone's car is ready, that you send them a message to come pick it up. And having that type of experience, leaning on those who've built it is when.
I mean, that's a great sales tactic, is just point out what that customer's competitions are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's the reason about that.
Yeah, and partnerships are a huge thing, right? We've already talked about there's providers out there that are offering free AI analysis, right? I know we've got CM.com, Cinch, and Telarus here. All three of those guys are ready and willing to sit down with you, go through a sales process, and help you win deals, right? Don't feel like you have to take this on yourself and completely reinvent your sales process, because we've all been there and tried to do that. It's difficult, but if you can start the conversation, go back into your customer base, start with a handful of questions, and then partner up with some of these guys that are offering these services for free to help you win, which is obviously going to help them win. That's where you really need to start.
You know where a great lead source is? In that hall out there. Because as a partner, I want a text message when something has occurred with one of my customers. Right? I don't want to get an email. I'm sick of getting those automated emails that, hey, we ported a number. How about we make that a more efficient process and send me a message, send the customer a message. So if you could get some CX providers to do that out there, that would be fantastic. Good.
So we've actually broken my first rule in talking about CPaaS. Is the first rule in selling is never mention CPaaS. This is like Fight Club, seriously. Because you lose the customer in that first sentence, right? It really is CX, it is the customer experience. And so, what we're trying to do at the Alliance, even though it's in our name, is we're literally trying to get rid of all the asses and really focus on the customer. And so with that, I think we'll wrap it up. We do have a few minutes. I think lunch is next, so we are not getting kicked right out of here. But if there's any questions for anyone in the panel, we can probably take those for a minute before we run off to lunch.
Uh-oh.
See?
Big time.
Yeah. Clark Peterson, everyone.
Before we I will say though that you want to have CPaaS just for your own valuation, right? When we bought Nextflow at Vonage there, I mean, when Ericsson bought us for $6.2 billion, it was mainly because we had a CPaaS platform.
Absolutely.
So nothing else have it in your arsenal for the evaluation standpoint. But I heard you talk a lot about messaging. What about authentication as do you look at that as low-hanging fruit to sell as well? And which one's the best one? If I was just going to learn with one thing to sell, would it be messaging? Would it be authentication? Would it be something else?
So 2FA, I think right now, Clark, you would know, it's 80% of global messaging traffic, right, for authentication. So I guess number one, it's a tried and true use case. If you run across a customer that's got applications that they're servicing their customers with and they don't have 2FA already, straight out of the box, you should be talking to them about that. But I would actually go back to the other pieces that haven't already been touched. What's the marketing team doing with messaging? What is your ops team doing, right? When an order gets completed, somebody's coming out to your house, or you want to confirm an appointment. What are you doing to make sure that people are showing up, that people are there and ready? And that's where messaging can come in and be a huge benefit, not just to you, but to your customer as well.
Yeah, two-factor authentication is obviously low-hanging fruit. It's easy to talk about that, but there's really not a lot of revenue attached to that once implemented. Whereas if you go to marketing and you can define a cost per lead and actual revenue op, you're going to see more traction and probably bigger dollars with regards to the implementation.
Yeah, good point.
Good question. And I really want to echo Shane's excitement, right? I think we all love getting in and solving customer problems. This is really a toolkit that lets you get in and literally do anything for your customer. So the question really is, what do you want to do? What do you want to do today that you're not able to do? And guaranteed you're going to get in there with all of the pieces that are available in CPaaS today, and you're going to be able to solve customer problems, which I think at the end of the day we all like to do, and it's really fun because you can do it now.
If I could just add to it, and one of the things that drives me nuts is the fact that there are still so many premise-based systems out there, and people just aren't moving as fast as we want them to. I think there's an immense opportunity to augment some of those efforts, efficiencies, however you want to define that, within a premise-based world with a CPaaS platform, so that now you've got a chatbot and you've got some advanced features that then it makes for a much more efficient system, especially with the really good interfaces. It becomes pretty seamless, easy to administer. Does somebody else have, I thought I saw it, did you have a question or comment?
All right, looks like we're okay. Good to go. All right, well, we appreciate everyone's time, and we've got specific names and companies, so if something resonated here, come hit us up and we'll help you out. Thanks for your time.